Sam, welcome to the Transform Your Future podcast. How are you today, my friend?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to spending this time with you and talking about Truvle and talking about your book, How to Have a um, Conscious Business. So I'm very interested to talk about this stuff. Hear what you have to say. Why don't you start us up and jump in about why you felt you needed to write this book? What was going on that led you to that, and a little bit about that process.
Sure. So I've been a process scientist for my whole career. I've been studying and learning about process management, process tools, things like that. And as I started to really push my work into the digital space and experiment and play with the new, there was just this overwhelming amount of concepts that I was touching on and integrating. And I really sat down to write this book, Becoming a Conscious Business, first and foremost to organize my thoughts in a cohesive way,
Mm,
really consolidate a lot of this knowledge and these observations I was seeing working in the field as a consultant. And I just felt like it was a story that I had to tell. So that's the motivation behind it. But as I was writing it, I was also learning a lot. So you're seeing a lot of my learning journey in terms of how am I seeing businesses become more conscious? How am I seeing people inside businesses as more of a living ecosystem and trying to write a lot of the parallels between natural systems and corporate systems? That's a lot of what the book is about.
mm. Can you expand a little bit um, about that? Just that concept there. Let's unpack that a little bit. So, business systems, personal systems, consciousness. Can you unpack that a little bit?
Yeah, of course. So it sounds a little radical at first glance, but what I'm talking about is how businesses are conscious organisms, but not like, oh, they're becoming a robot or conscious like you and me. But if you look at, let's say, an ant colony, there's individual ants, and then there's this hive consciousness. When you watch an ant colony, they coordinate and they're signaling,
Hmm.
and they're all almost like as if every individual is part of this collective consciousness. Businesses are very similar. So when a lot of humans get together and we self-organize towards a certain objective, we start showing the similar hive behavior. So this hive consciousness forms, and it's what allows us to grow these incredibly complex organizations that are very coordinated, and we're doing a lot of great things. But but the point there is there's a consciousness that's greater than the human consciousness that starts to form. And that's a little bit more about what the book goes into, which is when you go to work, you're not just showing up as Eddie and leaving as Eddie. When you come in, you're becoming part of something bigger, and it starts to change the way you think. You start to become part of that hive. And that's a natural thing. It's not like some crazy thing that we should be afraid of, but it's a natural thing. So really commenting on the dynamics there, what that means.
So, an example of that, would that be like, for example, the idea of you have a mission, you have certain values, we're working to fulfill that mission, and this is part of that overall consciousness of what we're doing and what the business is about.
Yeah, exactly. And you start to take that mission on as part of your identity, as part of your person. So the more invested you are in your work, the more time you spend with a single company or entity, you start to feel this loyalty, this affinity to your colleagues, this affinity to the mission. When you have choices to make, you start to think on behalf of the business, not just on behalf of yourself. We're not just a collector of selfish actors. Sometimes we are, and depending on our role and like the way we think, I mean, everyone is an individual, but this group thing starts to form naturally. Just like if you joined any group that you really feel strongly about, like if you were part of a military organization or you're part of a sports organization, it's this hive mentality that forms, and you're not just looking out for yourself anymore. You're looking out for the organization. And sometimes that may seem silly. Let's say if I work in a fast food restaurant, you may not feel like, well, do I really care about the mission of Wendy's or McDonald's or whatever it is? But you can't help it when you work with other people and everyone is working on behalf of the business. It's just you build this muscles and you start syncing up with your team. We do this for so many hours a day. It changes the way we think. We become part of this group consciousness.
Hmm. Yeah. So, and obviously, this is geared more towards what kind of companies?
All companies. It's the same
Really?
dynamics for all companies. Yeah. It's a lot of the same mechanics of it's a conversation of being aware. It's being aware that you're not just yourself in every context that we're in. It's very easy to change the way you think or subtly change the way you behave if you join a group and that group builds that behavioral instinct in you to work on behalf of the group. So we can't just always think that, oh, we're just ourselves everywhere all the time and our thinking is our own. If you join a team, if you join a company, it doesn't matter what kind of company, you're going to start to be influenced by that group consciousness.
Mm,
And that's something
I
that
see.
it's not a dangerous thing, but we have to be aware of it because it will change the way you think. You read these stories, right, of corporate leaders that do all these messed up things, and you think, oh, that person's just twisted. They're just corrupt and they're just evil. But imagine being the head of a, several thousand person organization and you are driving the organization. There's all this energy coming up to your desk. You're the head of this giant organism. Sometimes it's very hard to just think on your own, right? There's so much pressure and there's so many things coming at you. It's part of being
Hmm.
in that group,
Hmm.
that dynamic. That's difficult to just cast aside.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, well, I guess originally what I was thinking about is I know a lot of there's like a huge majority of people out there who are solopreneurs, maybe entrepreneurs with a couple of people that they have on their team. And I'm just wondering, how they can take advantage of the idea of business consciousness when they're, have a smaller organization. I certainly understand what you mean by joining a bigger organization or having, a bigger organization with a mission. But I guess we all need to have a mission in our business and a vision for what we're doing and where we're going and focus on that.
Yeah, and even in the smallest business, if it's not articulated, so you don't have to have a big mission statement you hang above your door on a banner. If you behave consistently as a solopreneur, a mission and a vision are happening organically, whether you've stated them or not. And when you hire your first employee or you hire your first few contractors to help your small business, they're looking to you to mimic your behavior, mirror your behavior. They understand the mission and the values intuitively, whether you state them or not, as long as you're consistent in your behavior. And that's where a business consciousness is a baby, right? It starts to form, which is it's just these ideas that people start coalescing around. They change their behavior so they match the solopreneur's behavior. The solopreneur is creating that culture and creating that business consciousness through their behavior. And then they decide who to hire. And then they have biases in their first hires. So you can see how like a culture starts to form naturally. Missions and visions start to form naturally. And then when you look at it in scaled organizations that are thousands or hundreds of thousands of people, it's a whole different ballgame, but it all starts in the same place. Every business has this life cycle that it goes through. So as a solopreneur, you need to be very aware of the tone you're setting. Just like if you were parenting, right? Everything. Your employees see everything, your behavior, the way you treat them, the way you treat customers, the way you set the tone on your processes and your standards. This all builds into this business consciousness that eventually, when you get big enough, you don't control anymore. It just gets out of your hands.
Interesting. Interesting. I like what you're talking about, how it naturally kind of forms from the choices you make, the people you bring on, the focus that you are having everybody focus on. I like that. So how can, well, okay, so when you wrote the book, you wanted to write it, it was part of your personal process that you were really trying to understand the overarching theme and organize your thoughts and directions. What can I get out of the book? What is there in there for me to help me to be more successful? I'm just assuming that in the end of the day, being more business conscious and understanding your business consciousness is going to help me to maybe hit goals faster or be able to make better decision processes, right? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, for sure. The book is more of a, let's say, cerebral, sort of heady kind of intellectual journey than it is a book about practical self-help or, building practical business skills. So I'll just caveat that. I mean, don't look to read my book if you're looking for, here's the next 10 best tips so you can be a better corporate employee, because it's definitely, it wasn't
Yeah.
written that way. Like I said, it was more
Yeah,
for
yeah, yeah.
self-discovery. But I will say it's the central theme of it. We talk about the consciousness, but it's really a lot about process. It's about how process and learning better process skills built this awareness of all of these social and cultural dynamics and these consciousness dynamics. So I definitely think if you're looking to read a book where there's an intersection of how do I become more personally grounded and mentally aware and conscious, how do I build better process skills, and then how do I apply that in the business setting, I'd say the biggest thing you're going to get out of my book is just this general awareness, like more awareness of what's going on. I think the more awareness you have of what's going on, the more accurately you can navigate your environment. But it's a very broad statement, right? It's not going to give you a set of concrete tools. So I don't want to mislead anyone.
Very good, very well. And I understand that you have your company Truvle. And can we just talk about that for a minute, and then I want you to like maybe give me a case study.
Yeah, of course. So Truvle is a process science tools company, and specifically, we just released our first tool around process mapping. And this is all related. I know it maybe sound like it's all over the place, but for businesses, small or large, the thing that a lot of businesses are struggling with is getting good quality process data. And when I say process data, I mean, how do you describe the actual operations of your business? What are the processes of your business that make it run, and how do I write them down? So if I'm a solopreneur, I think a lot of people, they feel this first when I hire my first person. Let's say I'm growing, my business is going well, and I want to hire my first person. How do you train that person? How do you tell them what the processes of your business are so that they can understand and they can support you? That's where first people most run into this awareness that, oh, I might have a process issue, because they either have to shadow them or they're training them by just, by hand. Every day is just something different. It becomes a very difficult process. You want to be able to
Or
write your
another
processes
popular
down.
way, just to interrupt you a second, another
Of course.
popular way is they have like almost an internship program. So you have somebody and like you start here and you're going to learn this, and then you go up to the next process and learn that until you're a master or whatever. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, especially in other use cases, if you want to buy a new system, this is a big one, right? You want to buy your next best SaaS product, and you're like, oh, this is going to help me automate and do all these great things in my business. But then putting it in play is a lot harder. And you think, oh, they sold me, this is crap. This doesn't work for my business. But that's actually fundamentally a process problem. It's you
Hmm.
don't understand your own process enough to configure systems and tools to help you properly.
Correct.
Yeah. So a
Yes,
lot of the work
yes.
we do is just helping people write down what is that? What is that data you need, that process data, so that you can start working with it. And this comes back to just giving people better tools. So that's what Truvle does. That's what Truvle's all about. And like you said, I gave some of those use cases in the examples, but you need it for a lot of things: training, delegating, communicating with vendors, configuring new systems, looking for process improvement opportunities. It all starts with knowing what your process is. And that's becoming a lot more tricky than people think, especially in the digital world, where we might be
Hmm.
don't have offices, working with contractors all around the world. If I asked you, well, tell me what the process is day to day, how do you answer that question? You've got to be able to write it down. You've got to be able to map it somehow. And that's what we help with people with that Truvle.
Mm. And and I do understand like there's other tools that people have used to do that, mind maps and mapping tools, and boy, it's like becomes complicated and weird. So I know that like that's an important part of what you're doing is you're making it so that it's simple to map out these processes.
That's exactly right. Yep. You're selling it for me. It's not an open canvas. It has a language, it has an opinion, and that's coming from all of our expertise for the last 15, 30 years collectively with my co-founders in the field doing process management work.
Hmm.
So we tell you what is the right way to write down process information. We create tools so it's easier to do, especially if you're in a live session, because a lot of times people know how to do it on a whiteboard. But if you're doing it in a Zoom meeting, all those other tools are hard to use because they're just open. There's just infinite flexibility, and it's
Hmm.
tough to do that live. So we're creating a tool that has an opinion. It's built for live use in virtual conferencing, and it's meant to get you from having a conversation about process to having finished process documents very quickly. That's the problem we're trying to solve.
Interesting. Almost like you can workshop the whole thing, and then at the end of the workshop, you have everything taken care of.
Correct. Our goal is to auto format with a button. So it creates swim lanes, it creates all the things you're looking for. And hopefully from meeting to publishing, maybe like 10 or 15 minutes versus several hours today for most people
Interesting.
using other tools.
So tell me about some case studies that you've had with individual companies. And, you could pick whatever you want, if it was a solopreneur or a medium-sized business or whatever, a small business or an enterprise business.
Sure. I'll pick that technology use case, which is actually the biggest one nowadays. And that's for, I've done it, in the last 6 months for small, medium, and enterprise level clients, which is, let's say we want a new project management system. And some of the big ones are Asana, Monday.com. I want to use
Hmm.
Notion. I want to use MS Project. I want to use Smartsheet, because I need to manage my projects better because I've got multiple people. I don't know what they're doing. There's tasks all over the place. A lot of people either tried to buy it and do it themselves, or it was too big, like at the enterprise level, and they needed a consultant to do it for them beforehand. But the first step is always they have to map their own processes first and what systems they're using first, because you're not going to be able to get your people from one place to another if you don't know where you are today. So a lot of the use cases, we have to go in and we have to write down accurately their processes today and how they're working together today. Even if people say, well, it's crap how we're working today. I don't care. Get me in the new system. You can't get into a new system if you don't understand the process that you're operating for today. You're just going to break it, and it's going to be a painful process. So a lot of our use cases look like that, where we'll write it all down for clients, or now with the tool, they can write it down themselves a lot easier, and we can just spot check, or they can spot check once they're practiced. And then you can give that to your technology vendor. On the first day you hire somebody from Asana or a technical consultant, or if you're a solopreneur, you just want to buy it yourself, you have to be able to understand how to configure it. And this is what we help people.
Interesting. I could see that being very valuable, to help focus on, like you were saying, I have automation tools and AI that I use, that I have other people, clients who use it. And definitely, this is always an issue of how to adapt what you're doing and how you're doing things to make the tool make it more productive for you rather than slowing you down.
That's exactly right. And a lot of people try to glance over that piece that you just said, which is, well, what is it that you're doing? And they say, oh, they'll have a quick conversation about, well, I do this, and I do this, and I do this. And everyone says, oh, great. But it's hard to write that down. And then it becomes different every time you hear it, because process data is like that. It's very complex. You're describing people working in reality, multiple people working together on multiple systems and different sequences. It's hard data to keep in your head. You could hear it one
Hmm.
time in a 30-minute or hour meeting, but then everyone goes off that meeting if you don't write it down with a different impression. And that's where the project starts to go off the rails. So it's exactly the situation you're talking about, where what is it that you're doing? If you don't have that on paper, all this work becomes very difficult.
Yes, it's been a struggle for me actually, in this area. So I'm really getting into what you're saying, because taking my process of certain parts of our business that, you know, we want to just structure in such a way that somebody can take that seat to do it and take care of that responsibility, but do it in the same way. Like it's not an easy process to like spec that out and break it down in some fashion that makes it kind of simple for somebody to take that and get the same result, right? Instead, sometimes I find I create convoluted documents that have so much information in it that, like, people have to read, a 10-page document and really compress and understand it and study it and ask 50 questions before they can actually do it the way that I do it, so to speak.
Yeah, and you just described it beautifully. You just put it right on the nose, right? This is what most people struggle with at one point or another for various use cases in every business. There's no way to
Hmm.
avoid this problem you're talking about. It's a hard one to like get your head around at first, but like you said, you need to describe a process to someone, and you start in whatever way is the most comfortable for you. I could be writing down in a Word document, I could start in Excel. It depends who you are. But once you get to that 10 pages and you're like, it got too complicated, and people can't absorb that information that way. They can't read a document that's even 4 or 5 pages long and get it that way. The process has to be shown visually if people are going to understand it quickly, because it's just too much density, like you said, of information. What if it goes A or B? Once you start to write that in a Word document, you lose it. It's just so hard for people to get it that way. So let's say I tell you, you've got to draw your process data out. Like if you want to do that next time, Eddie, you've got to draw it in a process picture. But now you've got a whole suite of other problems, right? You don't know how to do process diagramming. You've never done it. You could pick up a Miro or a Visio or all these blank canvases, but then you got to make it all up from scratch. It's very intimidating, right? It's a high learning curve.
Hmm.
So
Yes,
that's
yes.
the problem we're trying to tackle, which is you need to write process data down for something or someone. Let me give you a tool that makes it easy, makes it fast. You can do it live with people digitally. That's the problem we're trying to solve. It's giving you your process voice so you can solve a whole host of.
So it's like almost like there's like some standards. Like, here's some standards for you, and you could use this one and make it to, customize it to you, or you could use this one, right? Something like that.
Yeah, it's a standard process language. That's the easiest way to describe it. So you're not
Hmm.
coming up with the shapes, the colors, the conventions, the type of data, the
Hmm.
detail level of data. That's all suggested for you. And you don't really have the option to customize it. It's a very robust language. You don't need a lot of
Hmm.
options if you're trying to describe most process data to people. So it's
Hmm.
it's actually more here. Use this out of the box and play with it and do it. And it will make, and because it's so structured, we were able to design the interface so it's a lot faster and also easier to use because there doesn't have to be a lot of optionality. So we're kind of coming to market with not a ton of customization, but the exact opposite. A lot of here's what it is, but because we're there, you get all this other benefit of it's faster, it's easier to use, it has a simpler interface, and the data is more structured. So you can output.
Hmm.
Imagine you write one of your 10-page process doc, the one that you were thinking in your mind.
Hmm.
Imagine if you could automatically hit a button and it will say, well, this is how much percentage of that is actually done in email versus Slack versus this other system. Here's how much of it is done by this role versus that role. Let me print out an actual role card that shows it in a different view. That's all possible when you have the data more structured. And that's kind of what
Mm,
we're hoping to provide businesses.
interesting. Well, you've used the term data a lot. Can you just expand about what data, and maybe is there certain data that I need to look at, or that I need to understand and bring, this data with me?
Yeah. So it's a great question. And I use the term process data. When we think data, a lot of us are trained to think numbers. It's not numbers in this case. It can be numbers, but process data is any data set that helps you understand how a process is operating in reality. It's the process that it's the data set that process people use to analyze your efficiency, analyze where there's waste, where there's room to optimize your operating model, things like that. But it could literally, that data set can be a story. So your 10-page document that you wrote down to describe how something is done to somebody else, that is 10 pages of process data. And that's what I'm referring to.
Hmm.
It's like if you were going to consume, somebody else was going to consume that data, your intention was that the outcome of that data is they learn a new process. They understand how to do something, combining
Mm-hmm.
their capability with tools in sequence in a
Mm-hmm.
particular context to produce a business result. That's a data exchange. So people
Mm.
don't think about it that way, but that's what I'm referring to, right? It's any data set that is meant to describe in a high quality level a process scenario for the purpose of, like you said, training, configuration, mostly
Mm-hmm.
communication.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Interesting. Who's the market that this is really kind of built for? Who's your target market for Truvle?
So our target market initially is we're looking for business analysts, project managers, process engineers, lean process facilitators, people who are doing this on a very frequent basis, because that obviously gives them more utility for the tool. But my ultimate customers, everyone, which is a terrible marketing answer. My marketing people are always like, you can't say everyone. That's not a market. But everyone needs this in one way or another. And small businesses and medium businesses can benefit from this type of thing in a host of ways.
Yes,
I
and
want to
it's
create
it's quite affordable as well.
Yeah, I mean, for individuals, I mean, we're basically giving it away for free. I mean, it's really for enterprises, there's a lot more complexity. But for a small business, that was the whole thing. As small business, we can't hire consultants. We can't afford consultants. Nobody brings in a process person to map all their business and give them strategic advisement. That's just not an option. We're hoping this tool becomes that digital consultant for most businesses. But like you said, the original customer, people who do process mapping all the time, business people, business analysts, project people, technology people, SaaS people. That's who we're talking to first to get this out the gate, at least.
Mm. I love it. I mean, so much of the world, when I built the software company that I built, and we launched the software using the Scrum method, and just repeatedly doing Scrum until I went out and spoke to people about whatever the idea was, and it got traction, right? If I couldn't get traction talking to people, nobody was interested, then I just threw it to the side, and we went back to the process Friday night to create something again. But anyway, when we created that, um, absolutely, we needed help. We needed to organize things, and it was very difficult breaking all that down and making it all work together. And I really see like something like this would have really helped me at that time, especially. But I see that it could help me today as well. I mean, what I'm trying to say is like data is so very important, right? And the guys that I was working with back then in 2011, these guys didn't understand the value of the data. I think today, when we talk about data, people understand the value of the data. They understand that knowing people's behaviors and the things that they're doing and what they're interested in, the values that they have. This is like actionable data to help us, move forward, better connect to our customers and our client base. We understand that on so many levels. And process data is also within that, although it's not maybe numbers like you're saying, again, we live in a data-driven world, and the more data that I can get at a high level to help me to decide go left or right, and how to structure something, maybe this data is going to inform me to structure it a completely different way than the way I was doing it. So I think it's important, and I think it's great that it's a easily affordable thing that everybody could just sign up and uh, take advantage of it and see how it informs your process and see how you can use it to better your processes.
Yeah, I totally agree. And like you said, in a data-driven world where most people are trained now to look for the data, you're also looking for consistent and accurate data. And most people
Hmm.
ask for this high-level process data. It's the context, right? If you say, hey, I want to know how many times this person clicks, or I want to know how many impressions I have, like basic marketing data, the process data is the context that makes that make any sense. Well, what does your website flow look like? How many customers are actually engaging with you and why? That's process data. It sits on everything. And we're asking for it every day. We just don't know we're asking for it. And we normalize the fact that process data is usually crap. It's just like we have, hey, what are you doing here? You tell me. No one writes it down. It's always inaccurate. It's never fact checked. And then you just go off and do other work. It's a
Hmm.
huge problem for everybody. And that's what we're talking about. So I like the way you
Yeah.
articulated it because people want better process data. They actually just don't know how to ask for it.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Or like you said, they don't want to hire some expert to come in and go through everything and do it because maybe it's cost prohibitive at this time. And
Yeah.
so you say, well, we'll do that later when when we make $1 million a year, then we can afford to pay somebody $20,000 to reevaluate everything and help us do things. So there's a real need. I think there's a real window there for a need for a lot of people, and you really fit it. I think that's awesome. We need to get the word out about that. Absolutely.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's what I think too. Marketing is kind of my weak spot, so that's where I'm
Hmm.
excited to get the tool out there. But it's like you say, it takes us 10 or 15 minutes to talk and say, "Oh, now I get it. Now I know exactly what you're targeting."
Yeah,
I need to get better at that conversation faster. It's definitely an opportunity for us.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, and obviously, I would say in my experience, because for 20 years I did marketing and advertising for small to medium-sized businesses, basically, and had a certain model and certain types of clients that we only worked with. But interestingly enough, a lot of times what happens is and I'm a victim of it as well. Excuse me. Let me back up a second. It happens to me too, right? So sometimes you're so in it and you understand it from your level and your way that it's very difficult for you to turn that around and make it in a marketing kind of messaging, right? Because I'm so stuck in it and it does help to have somebody outside kind of create that because I'm in it every day and I have my judgment about everything.
Yeah. Well, there's
And
no question about that.
especially when you're a doctor or a lawyer or somebody who's highly technical and have technical skills. This is actually always a big issue in the world. Technical people want to explain things in a technical way. When you're marketing to people, it doesn't resonate. They unless they specifically you're talking about some specific thing that at this specific moment, yeah, I need that technology. But I love it. I love it. So tell me a little bit about how you ended up here with Truvle. I understand you've been doing this for a long time. What was the reasoning, or what was the thing that was the impetus of all this that got you thinking we need to make this a business and we need to get clients? What was that?
Yeah, for sure. It's a pretty easy arc actually. So I started my career in, like I said, low level process engineering, and I just fell in love with the subject matter expertise, and I just kept pushing it. I joined a consultancy for a number of years, and I said, I still feel stifled. They're asking me to do it this way. I think there's opportunity to do it another way, like a better
Mm,
way. I wanted to experiment. I wanted to get out there and do my client work with new methods, new process work, sort of this trippy stuff that I've been talking about. And like, there's different ways that organizations function. I think I can map it out and I can help clients understand. So I started my own consulting brand. That was about 8 years ago now. So I also can consulting in the field and have under my own brand and building a small consultancy. And then after all that time, philosophically, you reach a point with a consultancy where, okay, if I want to help more people, do I want to scale a consultancy? But that comes with its own problems, right? Because you have to bring on more consultants and you're diluting the knowledge. And then you're
mm-hmm,
creating also this, I think, conflict structure, which we don't have to go into, which
mm-hmm,
is
mm-hmm,
I don't want to grow this consultancy basically. So I wanted to take this knowledge and scale it. So that's what was the brought us
mm-hmm,
to a software company, right?
mm-hmm,
I want to take the success we've had in the field and I want to make it more accessible so that other people can get it and they can get it the right way and they can also empower process capability within their organizations. So just 2 years ago, we decided consulting company will stay small and contracted and we'll move our knowledge into software and automation. And that's why we're here.
Excellent. So how's it been going?
It's tough. It's tough work. It's a real different kind of business to start a software business. So I'm not going to mince words there. We've learned a
Mm,
lot and we're still learning and we're still trying to find that product market fit. But it's been a great journey. The software looks great. I think we're ready to help people, and that's what it's about in my mind. So I think it's been a fun journey. I hope we can find a lot of customers and we can kind of blow this thing up, and that's where we're at.
that's great. That's great. And obviously you've got a team of people helping and informing you. You already mentioned that you have marketing people with marketing expertise, trying to inform how you do things. And I'm sure they're probably doing the common thing that everybody talks about, niching down and focusing on an area and things like that. But I see the dilemma that this actually is such a wide net that there's like so many people who can benefit from this in their businesses. So that's an interesting dilemma, actually.
It's been our toughest problem to solve as a business, a young business, honestly, which is that everyone does it, but some people do it maybe once a month. Some people run into this problem once a quarter, and some every week and every day. But how do you
Mm,
segment the market to
mm,
find those customer targets? They have different roles, they have different names, they have different functions in their companies. It's in a way, process is becoming a much bigger need because we're digitizing rapidly and everything's changing faster. The nature of the
mm-hmm,
market is evolving so that if you don't have good process skills, people are struggling. But they also still, it's a new problem. So people don't really know how to articulate it. They don't know how to ask for the right help. They don't know how to ask for the right tools. So in a way, it's a big opportunity. But that piece, the communication, the translation of the problem and the need, it's a very challenging marketing problem for us, certainly.
interesting, interesting. So, I want to talk a little bit about just going down a little bit deeper here. This idea, would you say this is a disruptive idea?
I would, because it's disruptive in the sense in two ways. One, it could very heavily disrupt the consulting market because the alternative that we're basically the closest alternative to what we're trying to build is hiring a consultant, which is a whole different experience. And there's a lot of market share there that no one's really going after. It's like automating consulting in a way. So that could be disruptive in that sense. The other type of disruption is if the cost of doing this kind of process work goes down significantly, you're going to see a lot more high quality process data created. And that's really what we're needing for all this automation and AI driven work that people are talking about. So, in a lot of ways, people are really excited. AI is the hot topic, right? Better automation,
Mm-hmm.
better AI, better robotics.
Yeah.
They want to get it and they want to get into their businesses, but there's a process problem there because it's actually highly complex process work if you want to do it correctly. Otherwise, it's just edge cases and gimmicks and marketing. The
Mm-hmm.
AI is just
Mm-hmm.
doing stuff on the edges. To
Yeah,
get
it's like every company, everybody out there, they all have to use the word AI. They have to like release content about AI. They have to be talking about AI. I'm going to give you 500 AI tools. I'm going to give you 1,000 AI prompts. It's like
it,
it's crazy. Yeah.
yeah, it's the fad. And just like all fads, we had big data. We had the first wave of automation. There was all the software solutions. People did the same thing. It's the right idea. We're going to get there eventually, but what's stopping it from really exploding is we just don't have good process muscle. We don't have good
Mm-hmm.
process tools. We can't actually go from, hey, today we're working by email and spreadsheets and chat, and we're pretending to use all these complex tools, but it's really still people holding most big businesses together in the background. Nobody wants to talk
Mm-hmm.
about that. They don't want to do the
Mm-hmm.
process work that's needed to really automate some of these processes the right way. So we're hoping that we can also help with disruption because if people had better process data, they can make better decisions. We should see these projects moving faster. We should see a lot more actual inclusion of new technology into your operating models. So I really truly believe if we build more process muscle around the market, it could be revolutionary in the sense that we'll start moving much faster and the outcomes could be significant,
Mm-hmm.
or at least that's my dream.
Yes. Process. Well, I don't know, a couple of years ago. I mean, I've been involved in AI since like 2015, 2016, when, it wasn't called that really. It was, about machine learning and,
Yeah.
about making data decisions and understanding the trends within the data. So, it's interesting how it's evolved right now to this thing, which is a little strange. like talking about it as if it's an entity of itself. And I think you're right about that, is that it doesn't actually function well without being curated. You need somebody to curate that to get the results that you want. You can't just press a button and walk away and everything just magically happens, right? Um, but I've seen really good use cases over the last, 10 years of, you know, people using it to save time in their business, being able to answer frequently asked questions easily. So like there is a benefit, but I think there needs to be a human checking everything. You know what I mean? Like it's weird when you get into these things where you go to support and you're talking to an AI for 15 minutes trying to find the answer to what you want. It's like annoying, right? If the AI can't help me in a minute, I think a human being needs to step in and get involved right away to try to help, right? So without that human element, then I agree. It doesn't really function the way we want it to function. But what other kind of processes around that can we break down maybe like an individual process that has to do with that? Are we talking about like what is my process for how I'm using an AI software to get a certain result of what I want? Is that like an example of what we're talking about?
Yeah, it would be more not like how am I using the software to get what I want, but analyzing a process and then properly being able to identify what you could get software or AI or other forms of automation to handle. So what I always tell clients,
Mm,
especially let's say we map your process, and I'll just use an example. You
mhm,
have a process that you spend most of your time on. Let's say 4 or 5 hours a day, you're engaged in this process. Maybe it's a sales process, maybe it's this or that. Write it down
mhm,
first. And then if you want to automate it, automation doesn't necessarily even need to include machinery. You could automate some of your process by delegating it down to a junior person.
mhm,
You're just driving the cost of decision making down. That's the heart of
mhm,
automation. So, in
mhm,
order to do that properly, first I would write down all of your process and you need to be able to look at it because then you can
mhm,
say, in a structured way, well, this could be pushed down to another person. This could even further be pushed down to a machine. This could be pushed down
mhm,
to AI generative chatbot or learning.
mhm,
But your goal is you're just pushing everything down as much as you can, but it still all has to make sense. And at the end of that process, it has to be the same process. That's the process that drives your business. That's the
mhm.
process with the outcome that your customers expect. So if you
Yeah.
can't analyze the process first, it's a crapshoot, right? It's like I'm going to just pick a random thing that I want the AI to do. How does it fit into what you're doing today? How does it fit into the customer experience? How does it? This can be a very scientific process. Businesses around the world could just write down what they do, analyze their process properly, and go through this structured way of thinking about it. But that's sort of the thing. It's more how do I analyze and identify the right delegation parts of my business to push down the machines? If you do that, then the likelihood of it succeeding is way, way higher. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, and I like that. I like that. And I just want to say I'm sorry about my voice today. I did a rookie move yesterday, and I hung out at the beach all day and slept on the beach for a few hours, and I didn't drink enough liquid, so today my vocal cords are a little dehydrated. So I apologize.
Oh,
Um, but for a guy who makes his livelihood from speaking, it's like an important thing that I didn't take care of yesterday. But one of the ways that I do that, and just again trying to like put this all together to make sense, like one of the ways I do that is I track what I actually do, and and then I look at it and I say, like some of these things are just a waste of time. Like I'm doing something and there's no result. It's just wasting my time. I'm not really actually moving the needle anyway. I want to eliminate those things. And then there are things that I think are valuable, but I don't like doing them. I just don't really enjoy doing those things. So then I want to get somebody else to do those things for me because I don't want to spend my time doing it. I have a certain skill set and I need to just be using that certain skill set, my talents and my skills, and work on that and deal with that, not waste my time on these other functions that are not my forte. I don't want to be that thing. Like something simple like editing videos. I can edit videos. I mean, I have a 30-year career running a multimedia production company. I was an editor for many years when I was younger. Um, but I don't want to do that. That's not where I want to spend my time today. That's not really. my forte. My forte is somewhere else. So I want to get somebody else to do those things for me so I don't have to spend whatever it is, 10 hours a week, 20 hours a week, whatever it is,
Right.
doing that. So um,
And
I
what
see. Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, what's
Please jump
interesting about
in.
what you just described, your business intelligence that you've curated, you just almost perfectly described the process improvement lifecycle. And that's the thing, right? When you said, I look at what I'm doing, you're writing down your process and you're analyzing the as is process. When you look for waste and you look for opportunities for delegation, that's called process analysis. You're analyzing your process to understand what are my targets for automation, delegation, removal. And when you change the process based on those insights, you're doing process design. And then you land in a to be or a future state process, and then you just loop that iteratively for your business forever. So, like the way you described it in just terms that just made sense from your own business experience. That's the heart of process management. You got to know what it is first. You've got to be able to analyze it and look for the opportunities and look for the structure and look for the things that can move and change. Then you have to implement those changes. And then it just goes on and goes on. So it's just kind of, what did you have to do in your career to understand that intuitively? How can we bring younger people to get those knowledge and get that experience without having to go through 30 years in their own business, understanding how to
Mm.
delegate, understanding how to automate? That's sort of the process game that we're talking about.
Wow, that's deep. That's actually really deep because I think I have, you know, I it's an interesting journey for me that I was on, and as it informed me, I ended up changing everything because I wanted freedom. I didn't want to feel like I had a job because in the beginning, when I created my business, really all it was a high-paying job. And everybody wanted to work with me. I had to talk to everybody. The reason that people did business with us was because of me, and everybody wanted me to work on their projects. And at some point, I'm like, this is not a business, you know. This is like a big headache for me to have a job. So I started changing things and I started systematizing stuff. Right. I guess another word for process would be systems. Right. And I created some systems. So I had a concept and then a system so I didn't have to do anything anymore. I could be free to do some high level stuff and do the creative thinking that was necessary to create the opportunities, which led me to creating residual income. Like I just decided, like, you know what, the best thing would be to do is just do this work to create residual income and then just live off my residual income instead of trying to be a worker, so to speak,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And that's the
So,
journey of I'd condense that whole story to that's scaling through automation. That's what you're
yeah.
doing.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
That's what everyone wants, right? Well,
But if
everyone
if I
wants the free
if
time.
and if I were to understand these things back then in 2000, 1999, 98, and
Yeah.
moving on, if I were to understand some of these ideas better, then I would have been able to do it faster
Faster.
and get to that lifestyle. Because for me, it's a lot about freedom and lifestyle. Like I want to be free to live the lifestyle I want, to spend my time with the things that are really important to me. Uh, Yeah, and be free to travel. That's like a big thing for me. I have to be able to travel and go back and forth, stay in other countries, which is my passion, and hang out and learn things and meet people. So I love it. I think it's great. So we've talked about a lot of stuff. I'm going to join. I'm going to join and look at the tool and see how it can help inform me today and save me some time because I'm like in the process of breaking some things down. So that's really good and valuable to me. I appreciate that. Is there anything else that we haven't talked about that you want to talk about?
No, I could talk about process all day, every day. So there's a million things to talk about, but I think we've covered a lot. So I'm glad that you helped me. You invited me to the conversation.
Excellent. Listen, I'm gonna keep in touch with you. We'll go back and forth. I think you have a lot of knowledge that would be it's rather unique. It's not like the same old crap that 50,000 people are saying. It's something unique in there, a unique message, and I think that's awesome. And so I'll be in touch, and we'll see more will be revealed. We'll see where we go.
Thanks so much. Thank you for having me.
All right, brother.